When it comes to building a no-code app, you have tons of options when it comes to your storage backend. But if you're using Flutterflow, which is my no-code tool of choice, the easiest backends to get started with are Supabase and Firebase. These two backends are supported natively by Flutterflow. Now, while I have used Firebase's Firestore extensively in the past, ever since I built a couple of complex apps with Supabase, I realized that it is not only more powerful than Firebase, but is also much easier to get started and build the app of your dreams. And so in today's video, I will tell you why I plan to build all my complex apps in the future using Supabase only. Now make sure you watch this video until the very end, because I'm going to be saving the very best for last. But before we get started, as always, all the apps and all the resources that I discuss on this channel are available for you to view and or clone from my Patreon page. And you can learn more about our amazing Patreon community via the link below the video. Now, the first thing that you need to know about Supabase is that it's 100% free and open source. And so the source to all the code is out there on the internet. You can view it, you can analyze it, you can even contribute to it. You can add some new features, but most importantly, it is fully transparent, unlike a proprietary product such as Firebase. Now, in terms of actually using Supabase, you can head over to supabase.com. You can sign up for a free account and you can use their hosted service to host your own private instance of Supabase. But because this is a 100% free open source product, you can host it yourself. So you can simply head over to supabase.com, search for self-hosting, and you're gonna have step-by-step instructions that will tell you exactly how you can self-host your very own private instance of Supabase. And so whether you're going to be using Supabase on supabase.com or you're going to be self-hosting on your own hardware, really depends on your specific use case and whether you want to take full responsibility for hosting this complex system, as well as dealing with any issues that may arise in the future. Personally, I am 100% comfortable with using Supabase via supabase.com, but maybe your needs are going to be different. Now, one of the biggest differences between Supabase and Firebase is that Supabase is a relational database. So everything revolves around tables. And so the first step is to create tables for specific entities in your apps. So here I am logged into one of my projects here. And all I need to do is click on a new table and I can create a new table. So let's say I want to create a new table for my customers. I'm just going to call it something like this. And here I need to create columns that are going to be associated with different fields for each of the records that I'm going to be storing. So here I can create a new column, have a new column. So let's say this is customer name, this is customer location, and followed by customer notes. Next, I need to specify the type of field that I'm defining. So for customer name, this is going to be text. Customer location is going to be text, and customer notes is going to be text as well. Next, if I click on save, it's going to go ahead and create this new table for me. And here we are looking at my newly created table that currently has no records. Now, here I can create records manually, but I also have a built-in option to import data via CSV. So if I click here, I can upload the CSV or I can paste text. This is something that's not possible to do out of the box with Firebase, and as a result you need to rely on third-party apps to do just that. And so here I have some initial data in my Google Sheets spreadsheet that I want to import into my Supabase table. And so what I can do here is I can go into File, I can say download as comma separated values right here. That file has been created and downloaded. And then I can go back here and I can upload this file into my Supabase table. And here I can configure import data. So I can take a look at which columns to import. I want to import all the columns. And here I have a nice preview of the records that are going to be imported into this table. So if I like what I see, I can just click on import data, and it successfully imported 5 of these records into my new customers table. Now I can also control what kind of data goes into my table, what kind of data goes into my records here per fields. So let's say I'm looking at this table. We have customer name, customer location, and customer notes. Now I want to make sure that customer notes is always filled in and it has at least 5 or 10 characters. So in this case, I can just click here and I can say edit column. Then I can scroll down and I can do a constraint. Okay, so what I can do here is I can say, well, I want to make sure that the length of customer notes here is at least 5 characters. I want that field to have something, and I want it to be at least 5 characters. I mean, typically for this field, you might want to have it, longer, at least 20 characters. But let's just make it at least 5. Click save, and it's going to create a constraint on this column here. So now if I create a new record here, and let's say I put a customer as Tristan, location as Austin, Texas, and here for customer notes, I just put something hey, okay, which is invalid. And if I click save, I'm going to get an error. Failed to run SQL query, new row, violates check constraint. Okay, and so whether you're adding a new record here from the UI as I'm doing it now, or if you're doing it from your app, such as Flutterflow, or you're using an API, which we're going to cover in just a minute, you are going to get an error if you fail this constraint. And you can set these constraints everywhere, right? So let's say I have a new field. Let's say I want to create a new column, and this column is going to be called net worth. So we are tracking the customer's net worth, and I go here and I select numeric, and then I can create a constraint to make sure that the net worth of a customer is at least, $10,000 or at least $1 million. So I can just take this, paste it here, and it's at least 10,000. Okay, so I can just click save, and that's going to create a constraint. So let's say we are a big business, we have a B2B, and we don't want to deal with small businesses in this instance. And so now if I try to add a record and the customer's net worth is less than $10,000 in this example, we're going to get an error. And so if I add a row here and I say customer name is Jake, location is Houston, Texas, and notes is awesome customer, great to work with, and then net worth, I put 100, I should get an error. Okay, it's not going to let me save it. Violates check constraint for customers cost net worth check. Okay, and so this is very, very powerful because you are setting these policies on your database level. You're not doing it in your NoCode app. You're not doing your checks there. Those checks can fail, or you may forget to do those checks. It's a lot better to do them at a database level. And that way you can just do everything here in your table per field. And then regardless of how you're actually adding this data, whether you're doing it manually, you're using an app, you're using an API, if the data that you're entering fails the constraint check, your app or the API or whatever you're using to put this data in there, it's going to spit back an error message telling you that, hey, this operation, namely insert or update or something, failed. And this is why it failed, because the data that you entered failed the constraint check. And this allows you to create specific rules that are always going to be enforced regardless of how you're actually interfacing with this database. And this is something that you really can do in Firebase. Another thing that you can do is you can enforce uniqueness on a specific column for all the rows. So let's say we have a customer location, and we are only interested in having customers with a unique location. So we don't want another customer from New York. We don't want another customer from Los Angeles or Atlanta or San Diego or Seattle. We want this column to be unique. Well, in that case, you can just come in here, edit column, scroll down, and you can just click on this, is unique, and that's going to enforce values in this column to be unique across rows. Okay, hit save, and we've created another constraint. And so now let's say I add a new customer here, new row. Customer's name is William, location is Atlanta, notes, we have all the notes, and net worth is also good enough, right? So they're very, very wealthy. We're going to click on save, and guess what? Failed to run SQL query. Duplicate key value violates unique constraint. Okay, and you can also create a unique constraint across multiple rows. So maybe you are looking to have a unique combination of various rows. So let's say you only want James from New York to be unique. You don't care if there's another person from New York, but you only want, James, New York to be unique. Now, in this case, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but there's going to be a lot of situations where it makes a ton of sense. And this is a lot more powerful than you think, because you can essentially have your app create multiple records without checking whether those records, or at least part of that record, various fields already exist in the database. You can just add these new records, and the system is going to tell you, hey, this record already exists because you have a unique constraint on this. And this is done all the time, and this saves you so much time and so much aggravation, because now you don't have to check in Flutterflow, you don't have to select all the records, check if they exist, and only then add a new record. The system is going to check for that for you automatically. Awesome feature with a ton of real world use cases. Now, if I click here, I'm going to be shown an easy to understand API interface. So this is actually JavaScript interface, but if I click on Bash, I can see all the API requests for a specific column here, right? So I can say, well, I want this ID, I want this created at, it just tells me select created at. And if you scroll down, you can do filtering. Supabase provides a wide range of filters. And I actually use this powerful filtering feature when I was building a complex Supabase app that you can see right there. You can also do insert rows. You can do a ton of things using an API. And so if for whatever reason you need to have easy API access into your Supabase database, it's only a click away. While that's simply not the case with Firebase's Firestore. They do have an API, but you have to go through a lot of documentation. You have to read a lot of things in order to kind of make it work. While here, it's just one click. You just click on Bash, and here you can also choose your API key, and it's going to show you right here. And so as a result, you have an API request that's ready to go, ready for you to leverage it within your app or somewhere else. And this is simply not so easy with Firebase's Firestore. It's a lot more complex. You have to go through a ton of documentation. And so when it comes to accessing your data via APIs, there's nothing like Supabase's API interface out there. If you click this, you can set up real-time access to your database. So if you select this, you can enable real-time, and then using Supabase's real-time API, you can essentially create listeners on this data and get notified if your data changes in any way. And so let's say I want to know if somebody adds a new record, or if somebody updates a record, or if somebody deletes a record. Well, with this real-time API, my system will be notified, and I can take a certain action based on that event. So if I have some, data being updated, I'm going to get my old data and my new data. And then I can decide, well, is this something that I want to, display to the user? Do I need to do something with it? Do I want to send someone an email? There's many things that I can do. And all of that is thanks to this super easy to use and very powerful real-time subsystem. Another thing that I really like about Supabase, and I honestly feel this is a very much an underrated feature, are the extensions. So if you click here on database, you can look at your tables. You also have a schema visualizer, which is very useful. I use this all the time actually. But if you scroll down, you can see that you have extensions right here. So if you click on extensions, you have various enabled extensions that I have enabled right now, but we also have a ton of available extensions. Okay, so we have this address standardizer. So this is used to parse an address into consistent elements, generally used to support geocoding address normalization. But there's tons of other ones, right? You have HTTP. This is an HTTP client for Postgres, allows web page retrieval inside the database. So I can enable it right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on enable extension. And now with this extension enabled, I can do the following. I can come by here, and what I can do is I can create a new query that gets some external data. So I'm using this JSON placeholder. So if I load this data, you can see it gives me back a random record. And when I execute this query, it shows me this record from this URL. And so this way you can easily pull in external data that's available somewhere on the internet into your database without needing to go out and to do API calls or separate HTTP REST requests. It's all done inside of your database. Very, very powerful. And that is just one extension. There are tons and tons of extensions that do all kinds of very, very interesting things that you definitely will be putting to use in your apps, as you will see. Now, all these features are awesome, and they definitely help you when it comes to working with your data. But I definitely wouldn't call them groundbreaking. I mean, these features are nice, but they definitely wouldn't force me to move away from another database just for that. The biggest advantage to using Supabase is its relational aspect. Okay, and what exactly does this mean, and why should you care? Well, let me explain it to you right now. And trust me, after you watch this section, you will probably think twice about using Supabase for your next app. Now, let's say we're building an app similar to Upwork. Now, an app like Upwork revolves around jobs. There are people that are offering to do jobs, and there are other people that are looking for jobs to be done for them, okay? And so the first thing that you need to do is you need to create a table to store all those jobs. And so I created a table called Upwork Jobs, and this is a very simple table. We have the ID of the worker, and this is the person responsible for completing the job. We have the job name, the job price, and the job category. Now, a common scenario that you definitely want to build into your app is you probably want to have a page that gives you more information about the job, but also gives you some statistics about the person who is selling this job, the person who is looking to get hired. Maybe you want to see how many reviews they have or the average of the reviews. Well, you won't be able to do any of this in Firebase. You will have to do it in your NoCode tools. And so I've done this many times before in my Flutterflow apps, and I always end up building a custom function, using some filtering, some mapping, and a bunch of other things. But did you know that you can easily do all of this right inside of Supabase using views? But before I show you how easy it is to do all of this complex stuff right inside of Supabase, let me show you a proof of concept Flutterflow app that I built that demonstrates exactly what we need to do. And so here's a quick app that I built that first lists the jobs and also lists the reviews. And so let's go ahead and run this app so that I can show you exactly what it does. We're going to create a new session here. All right, so here's our app. And here we have two list views from two different tables. So we have the jobs table, we have the name of the job, the price, and we also have reviews. And so you have a review here and you have a rating. And this is great and all, but typically when you're going to be building your apps, you need to combine this data in some way, shape, or form. If you're building a detail page, so if I click on this job and I'm looking to learn more information about it, more specifically, who is the person that's offering to do this job for me, you know, I want to see information related to that person. Namely, I want to see how many reviews they have, average rating, things like that. And so here we have a bunch of user emails, but only one user has 3 reviews, okay? And that is this user right here, james@james.com. And the average of all of the reviews is 9 right here. And here I have another page here that just shows us some information about the job. So here we have category, count, and price range. And so this is the categories that represent the various jobs in the system. So we have design jobs, translation jobs, and software. Here we have the number of jobs for each category. So we have 2 jobs for design, one job in the translation category and 2 jobs in the software. And here we have a price range of all the jobs in that particular category, $125 to $250, $150 to $150, 100 to 200. And you probably wouldn't believe me when I tell you, but the data here and the data here was all done in Supabase. I'm not doing any logic in my no-code tool of choice. And I did all of this using a very, very powerful feature of relational databases called views. So if you head back here, we have our tables that represent specific entities. So here I have jobs, here I have user reviews. These are specific entities and they all go into separate tables. But anytime I need to display data that's combined, there's some logic being done, maybe I'm counting the number of categories for specific jobs, or I'm averaging the reviews. In other words, I need to do some aggregation of the data and display it in maybe a detail page or on some report. I can create a view to do that. So here we have a view called Upwork User Reviews View. So if I click here, this view pulls all the data from various tables and displays it, right? So as you can see, this is the exact data that you saw on the Flutterflow app. And that is because that's all the Flutterflow app is doing. It's not doing any logic at all. It's basically pulling this data and displaying it for the users to see. And if you go into the definition, you can see that we're basically pulling this information from 2 tables, the users table and the Upwork user reviews, and we're doing the counting and the averaging right inside of Supabase. Now, let me show you the second view. This is that second view that you saw on the app. And as you can see, this is exactly what you're seeing in the app. And that is because in this view, we're doing all the heavy lifting. We don't need to do any processing in Flutterflow. We don't need to create custom functions or create filtering or mapping or anything. We just do it here, and then we just display it in Flutterflow, right? So as you can see, we have job category, number of jobs for this category, and the price range, right? And if I go into definition, you can see that we have here a SQL statement, okay? It looks kind of complex, but it's actually very, very easy to do, right? All you need to do is go to SQL editor, and here you have Supabase AI that helps you build a query, and you can essentially tell it what kind of data you need in order to display it in your app view. So here's an example of a prompt that I used to create this exact view here. I just wrote create the view that shows count of job category, and the range of prices from lowest to highest as one field in the jobs table. And so I executed it and gave me the SQL statement to create the view. Then I executed the SQL statement and I have a view that gives me the exact data that I want. And this feature here is an absolute game changer, because now all you need to do is go to your table editor here, create the right tables for different entities. Do not worry about how you're going to be, combining this data and how you're going to be displaying it. Just create your tables for each entity, and then you can go to the SQL editor and ask Supabase AI to build you a query to get you the exact fields and the exact data from the tables that you have using English language that you need in order to display in one of your views. And so as a result, we just have 2 tables for completely different entities, jobs, reviews. You're going to have a users table, etc., etc. And then once you need some kind of a detailed view, or you need some kind of a report, job report, or what have you, you can just go into Supabase AI and tell it what kind of data you need. And this is absolutely amazing. This is truly a game changer, because this is one of the hardest things when it comes to designing your data schema and doing data modeling in Firebase's Firestore. And so if you don't believe this game-changing feature is going to nudge you to start using Supabase more for your complex app projects, then I don't really know what feature will. And that is why in the future, you're probably going to be seeing me use Supabase a lot more, especially when it comes to apps with complex data schemas, lots of tables, very complex views, as opposed to Firebase. Now, if at this point you're thinking to yourself, hey, you got some really, really good points, and I can definitely see myself designing the Supabase way, meaning creating tables, creating views, things like that. And I really like your approach of explaining all of this, because now it makes sense, and now I don't have to struggle with getting that perfect schema in Firebase's Firestore and all of that, because a lot of people having trouble with that. If that is you and you're looking to create more apps, you're looking to create complex apps, you're looking to create apps that have lots of views, that provide a lot of value to your users, then you definitely need to check out our amazing Patreon community. Remember, all the apps and all the resources that I showcase in my videos and all my videos, when I show you a new concept or a new technique or a new tool, or when I build a new app such as this one, you will be able to view and or clone all of these things on my Patreon page. And remember, when you join our amazing Patreon community, you're also going to get access to a lot of extra content, such as Q&As, live streams, behind the scenes series, as well as our Patreon supported masterclass series, where I do a deep dive on topics that the community votes on. And in fact, I'm going to be doing another masterclass very, very soon. I'm probably going to have a poll if that's what I should do, or maybe do a Q&A. You guys decide. But regardless, there's a lot of valuable content coming to our amazing, amazing supporters. And above all, when you join our amazing Patreon community, you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work. And that is highly, highly appreciated. And so if all of that sounds like something that might interest you, then you definitely need to check out our amazing Patreon community and consider becoming a subscriber.